Boom! It's Graceful Thunder. And today I just felt like reading out loud my story entry for the contest that's currently being held on the forums. I don't know. I just thought that if I went to all the trouble of writing it, that I may as well turn it into content for my channel. So here it is. I hope you enjoy, and I hope that it does not scare anyone. The Artist Witch by Graceful Thunder. Ah! The terrified scream of a cubie could barely be heard over a deafening crack of thunder. She was dressed in a pilgrim shirt, skirt, and bonnet, but these did little to help her in the pouring rain. She was soaked to the bone. Her heart beating wildly, the cubie looked up just in time to see lightning fork its way across the dark sky. She hugged her arms to her body, trying to stay warm as she stumbled through the forest, looking for anything that could offer her shelter. The next flash of lightning offered her some hope. It revealed a large mansion. Without thinking, she made a dash for the building and immediately tripped over a large tree root, falling face first into a puddle. She got up as quickly as she could and made her way toward the mansion, this time being a little more careful. She did not notice the bony hand that stretched up and out of the puddle, almost grabbing her skirt. The cubie walked hastily up the steps and to the mansion's large double doors. Shivering, she lifted a hand to knock. Before her hand could touch the door, however, it swung open. Thanks, she whispered, to whoever may have done it. All she was concerned with now was finding a way to get warm. She found herself standing in a grand room with a large staircase. Many paintings of various sizes and of different cubies lined the walls. Above her, a large chandelier swung back and forth gently. To her left, an open doorway seemed to invite her, as she could see the light from dancing flames on the wall. The cubie walked quickly into the room and was delighted to find a fireplace. Standing before it, she stretched out her cold white hands to warm them. The storm continued to rage outside, but she felt better for now. Turning her head, she began to take in her surroundings. The large old house creaked and groaned in the wind caused by the storm. Now that her eyes had adjusted to the light, she could more clearly see the room she was in. It appeared to be some kind of study. Shelves of books lined one wall, and flowery wallpaper coated the rest. Above a short hickory desk, a large painting of a gentleman seemed to look down at her with a disappointed stare. But wait. His eyes really were following her movements as she tried to dry herself in front of the fire. The girl felt a chill run down her spine as her white cubie face somehow became even more pale. Behind her, the door to the study slammed shut. The cubie hardly had time to gasp in horror before the man slowly slipped out of the painting and stepped down to walk toward her. The cubie took a few steps backward, then realized that the fire was right behind her. Suddenly, a doorway opened in the bookshelves. The cubie gathered her skirt and ran as fast as she could into the doorway. The man was right on her heels, but appeared to have been thwarted by the doorway closing itself again just as suddenly as it had opened. The cubie glanced in all directions, trying to make out any shapes in the pure darkness. In the far corner of this hidden room, a candle lit itself. The cubie hesitantly began to walk toward it. Just as she reached it, a horrible, shapeless thing pounced out of the darkness. Grabbing the candle, the cubie held it in front of her and shut her eyes tightly. She waited, tense, for the thing to hit her. When it did not, she opened one eye, and then the other. It had collapsed into a melted black puddle of paint on the floor. The girl let out a sigh of relief. She held up the candle, trying to see more of the room. She wanted a way back out of this mansion, even if it meant going out into the rain. The candle's light fell upon a door a few paces away. The QB walked toward it, looking warily around, and holding out her candle in hopes that it would ward off any potential attacks. She opened the door slowly and found a narrow staircase that wound around and up. The QB ascended the staircase, listening carefully for the slightest noise. The old stairs creaked beneath her feet. After a few minutes of walking, she reached a door. The staircase still wound further upwards, but she wanted to see what this door might hold. To her surprise and delight, when she opened the door, she found herself looking out into the dark night. The rain had slowed. Glancing down, the QB saw a ladder that she could use to climb down from this hidden door. She set the candle down and lowered herself onto the ladder, beginning to descend. However, as she neared the bottom of the ladder, she became keenly aware of something or someone breathing in the darkness. She stopped and looked around, then down. Her gaze met a pair of glowing green eyes below her. And then another, and another. A flash of now distant lightning revealed a pack of wolves. Terrified, the QB began to quickly climb up again. To her dismay, the wolves began to climb too, and with more ease than her. As soon as she reached the top, the girl blindly ran up the stairs, forgetting the candle. She could hear the wolves' feet as they hit the stairs behind her. They were getting closer and closer. Suddenly, the QB saw a door ahead of her open. There was light in the room ahead. With one last sprint and jump, she threw herself into the room just as the wolves were upon her. The door slammed shut behind her, stopping the wolves in their tracks. The QB sat up slowly, panting and trying to calm herself. Looking up, she saw another QB stood by the door, locking it. This QB was dressed in a blue shirt and blue flower skirt. On her face was a pair of nerd glasses, and her hair was gray and pulled back in a low bun. The woman smiled comfortingly at the girl. "I really am sorry about the rude welcoming, dear. I hope you were not too frightened." No, of course not," the girl stammered politely. She looked around at the room they were in and noted that it was a large bedroom. An old-fashioned four-poster bed stood in the center. Some desks and bookshelves stood beside the walls, and an expensive-looking rug lay on the floor. In one corner, an easel with a blank canvas awaited use. A frame leaned against one of two chairs near the easel. The most interesting thing about the room, however, were the many paintings on the walls. There was something about them that made the girl curious, though she couldn't put a non-existent finger on it. The woman helped the girl to her feet, then walked toward the easel. "Come, have a seat," she urged. She seated herself in the chair in front of the easel and motioned to the other chair. The girl walked slowly to the other chair and sat down. The woman looked the younger QB up and down for a moment, before nodding approvingly and smiling. "Perfect." She pulled a tray of paint bottles closer to herself and opened them, then leaned forward and began to paint on the canvas. The girl looked around the room again, fidgeting a little. She wasn't sure what the woman was up to, and she wasn't sure if she was supposed to say something. She began to feel oddly stiff and even a little sleepy. Suddenly, the paintings on the wall seemed to be coming to life. The QBs in the frames moved from their positions and began knocking on the inside of the paintings like doors. Their faces held various expressions of fear and horror. Their voices began to fill the girl's head. "Get up! Get up! Run! Don't let her paint you!" "Miss," the girl said softly, "I don't feel so well." "Oh? Don't worry about it, dear." The woman continued painting, and the girl began to feel trapped. The woman looked up at her and smiled, but this time there was a glint of evil in her eyes. "Stay still, my darling. Soon you'll become one of them." And as she spoke, the frame beside the chair lifted the frozen girl from her seat and placed her into the canvas. She fit right into the picture. The woman stood and lifted her new artwork up. She walked to the wall and hung it up, then stood back to admire it. As she did, her appearance changed. She no longer looked like a sweet old Cubie. Instead, her now elaborately arranged hair was orange. She wore a white dress and an evil grin. Let this be a warning to all Cubies. Never visit the artist witch's mansion on Halloween. Well, I guess that's all I have for today. Thank you for watching, and I hope you come back again.